Well, our normal themed weeks run Monday to Friday, but we had so much to talk about for this week of Profitable Property Secrets, which is based on the book of the same name by my co-host Steve Bolton, that we've extended it to Saturday and Sunday as well. So, Steve, there are so many mistakes that we can make on our property journey. We've been talking all week about trying to avoid them. We're moving on to kind of more advanced things now, because once you've established a good cash flowing, solid single occupancy buy to let portfolio, which is probably a good place for most people to start, you're probably then going to look at kind of more advanced strategies, and it is healthy to diversify and kind of push yourself and try and raise your game. And certainly in the current market conditions, I think refurbishment and development is a very good strategy. But then again, it comes down to those all important numbers, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I just caveat what you said about single occupancy. It depends on people's experience, how much money they've got. So some people go straight into high-end professional HMOs. Some people haven't even bought their own first flat and house. Some people have limited capital where actually, buying something, doing it up and selling it, it can be a good way to generate some capital gains. But I would always urge people to do that with something that at least washes its face, and has a bit of margin. So it can be single occupancy, but if you can buy it well, refurbish it affordably, and and add some value, and then potentially sell it, then that can be a good way for starting out investors to actually start to build up a capital pot. The risk with that is you might not be able to sell it, or what price are you going to sell it. So actually making sure that it will rent, and you're not going to be underwater from a cash flow point of view is, really, really important. So, we're talking about here not going over time and over budget. That's the kind of key focus. That applies to doing up a single occupancy property, doing up an HMO, doing something up and selling it, even property abroad. So the first thing I would say is, and this applies actually to any business in any kind of industry, is do benchmarking. Okay, so benchmarking, do you know what it costs to actually, on a kind of a national basis or a regional basis, for other providers to provide what you want? So I always remember going to Southampton and meeting a partner, and they took great pride in showing me around their house, quickly when I first arrived. And they said, yeah, this is our downstairs bathroom. We had a shower, and we got these beautiful taps and this beautiful flooring and all that kind of stuff. And it looked lovely. It was a nice sort of downstairs bath shower room. I said, how much did you spend on that? And they said £23,000.
Ouch.
And I was like, oh my God. And they saw the look on my face. And they said, why? It's like, okay, well, you could have done that and it would have looked exactly the same. Okay, the taps might have been slightly different make or whatever. £4,000. Yeah, you've wasted £19,000. Yeah. So why? Because they didn't have a benchmark. They had a builder or a couple of builders come in, saw this beautiful house. There was a nice car on the drive, thinking, oh, yeah, they're minted. I'm going to make a bit of money here. So what we have, and what you can kind of find on the internet or talk to people, is the day rates for electricians, for plumbers, for builders. How much does it cost to have an ensuite shower room put in? How much is a new kitchen? Actually, in the same way, the other day we were talking about, do your research on competition, do your research on the customers, do your research on the builders and tradespeople. How much do things cost? Yeah, what's the benchmark? So when you're having a builder giving you a quote, making that builder aware that either you've got a budget that you've already benchmarked, or if they come back with quotes, to just say, look, this is what other people are kind of charging. So understanding the industry that you're buying services from, what the benchmarks are, how much it costs, and then comparing those on a like-for-like basis, that's a really good thing to do, because then you're not getting into a negotiation about, oh, it's too expensive. It's like, no, I have alternatives. This is what those alternatives cost. In the same way that, I always recommend, if you're going to buy a house or negotiate on anything, don't insult the person by saying, okay, your house is on the market for $350. I'm going to offer you $250. This is like their home. It's like you might as well just go and personally insult them. It's much better to say, look, you've got an amazing house. I think it's beautiful, but I'm an investor. I've got other alternative properties that I'm looking at, and my key criteria is not where my kids are going to live for the next 20 years. It's actually, will it generate a return on investment. And I've got other houses, so I can afford to offer you, my spreadsheet says I can afford to offer you 275,000 or 300, whatever the number is. Okay, so you can put in a much lower offer, and the same with the builder. It's like, look, this is what I need a new kitchen doing. I've researched it. And actually, there are builders. Here's an example. Here's an example. Here's an example. And you can get them off the internet, or you can go to Howdens, or find other people, benchmark it, and then aim for good quality. Do your research, your due diligence on the builders, on the tradespeople, all of that sort of thing. But the number one tip I would say is kind of benchmark what is going to be provided, and then obviously choose the right people and then manage them. Don't just leave them. Don't just let them get on with it and say, okay, well, there's the brief, there's the scope, get on with it. Go in on a regular basis and make sure that you keep them on track, and you bring things up if things are going wrong, and don't keep changing the specification.
I was going to say that you need to start out with your specification and be really, really clear on all the works that you want doing, and then really, really stick to that unless some horrific problem appears where you've got to kind of change that, because every time you move the goalposts, it's going to take longer, and it's an additional expense, isn't it?
Totally. It's not your, we're talking about investment properties, okay? It's not your own home. So I remember a house I bought as a family home to live in back in 2005, okay? And I knew that it was going to be like a 2-year home, and it was going to become an HMO, all right? It was like a stepping stone property onto something else. A lovely house, 2-bedroom flat at the back, 6-bedroom house. So needed some work doing to it. So we're kind of doing it. I'm going around there with Lucy, my wife, and we're looking at. She's looking at the kitchen. Oh, I want a new kitchen, and I've seen this and that. And she's getting all these kitchen brochures out. I'm like, no, it's Howdens at trade prices. It's going to look very nice, but we're only here for 2 years. We're not spending 50 grand on a kitchen. We'll spend 8 grand on a kitchen, okay? Because it's going to be going to tenants. It's still going to look nice. It's going to be hard wearing and robust. So, if it's your own home, I would still try and do it affordably. Okay, but if it's an investment property, just focus on how cheaply, but with quality product, can I get this done, and don't get personally and emotionally involved in it, because the bill's just going to go up, and then don't change your mind. Don't say, oh, we're going to go for that spec, and then, oh, I'd like a door there, or I've thought about this, or absolute nightmare. If you do that, ask the builder in advance and say, I'm thinking of making this change. Can you give me a price for the cost implication? Okay, and then they and you can kind of see with an open book whether you're going to do it or not. Yeah.
No, that's very, very good advice. I think also it's knowing where to spend the money to deliver the best return. And I think, kitchens and bathrooms are, the two rooms that most people kind of judge a property on. So it's really important that the money is kind of, what money you do have is focused there. And, actually understand the best way to generate a return from each individual property, whether it does need a little bit of reconfiguration, putting in an ensuite or whatever. And I think builders can be really good sounding boards in that regard, can't they?
Yeah, definitely. It's really good to have a trusted partner and trusted builder, but it takes time to build that up, to get that kind of network. But I think in addition to kitchens and bathrooms, actually increasing square footage, is probably the best way to add value, because not always. I remember an example of one person I heard about that took a house. They spent £200,000 on it. They spent so much on it, even though they added extra square footage, it was down valued by £100,000 on refinancing because they'd spent so much. So checking out the comparable values of what, if you are going to improve a property, what are the comparables in the area?
What's the ceiling?
And what's the ceiling, exactly. Because if you spend too much or you buy too high, you're not going to recover that money. You're going to actually, either be able to refinance less out, or it's going to take you longer to take a gain in the future.
I think one thing that I really like about your refurbishment methods at PPP, Steve, is, and I visited a lot of your partners' properties, is that they still retain that feeling of a home. when you walk in, it doesn't feel in any way kind of institutionalized or, rabbit hutchy. And I think it's so important because it leaves the option open that in the future you might want to turn it back into a family home, to sell it and whatever. So I think, you've got a very, very strong blueprint for your HMOs that do give that feeling of it being a home rather than a kind of institutionalized kind of setup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at it in a more broad business sense, it's marketing, it's a division of marketing, which is branding. And a brand is, what does a brand exists in the hearts and minds of your customer.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do they feel? What's the emotional connection? What's the logical connection? What's the relationship connection? All of those sorts of things. You look at a lot of letting agents, and what do you see? You just see pictures of properties, and some look horrible and some look nice. And actually, we focus a lot on the community and the people, and who are you going to be living with? That's actually, yes, you want good Wi-Fi, you want it to look nice, it'd be nice if it's furnished and all those sorts of things, but who am I going to be living with? That's actually 80% of people that live in HMOs are single, so that social element is really important. So we focus on branding, we get our partners to focus on what does the customer want, what going to impact them at their emotional level but also intellectual level, and that's why the properties look stunning. They might not look amazing from the outside, but actually when you open the door and you go inside, it's just like wow, it's take their breath away kind of thing. It's just giving them that wow factor.
Fantastic. Well, that's brilliant stuff. So we'll be back again tomorrow for the final instalment of this special themed week with Steve Bolton from Platinum Property Partners. And tomorrow we're going to be talking, and again, I think this is something we should talk about a lot more, is about building relationships. And I know that's a topic very dear to your heart. So we'll be joining Steve again tomorrow for the continuation of our Profitable Property Secrets Week here on Property Tribe. So do join us.